All right, guys, it is official. The Liberals in Canada mounted what was an absolutely extraordinary comeback. They will be able to form a government led by Mark Carney, who was a central banker and now prime minister. Let's go ahead and take a listen to Carney in his victory speech, really talking about some of the fissures with the United States and how significant they're going to be now and in the future. Take a listen.
We are once again at one of those hinge moments of history. Our old relationship with the United States, a relationship based on steadily increasing integration, is over. The system of open global trade, anchored by the United States, a system that Canada has relied on since the Second World War, a system that, while not perfect, has helped deliver prosperity for a country for decades, is over. These are tragedies, but it's also our new reality. We are over the shock of the American betrayal, but we should never forget the lessons.
But you're going to take us forward.
We have to look out for ourselves. And above all, we have to take care of each other.
So, Emily, they are over the American betrayal, but it is not forgotten, and they will be moving in another direction moving forward. And let's just put the results up on the screen, and I want to get your reaction. I mean, the shift in the political winds in Canada has been extraordinary. We had David Dole, who is himself Canadian, he hosts Rational National, over on his YouTube channel. He was breaking down for us just how central Trump really was in this race. And according to him, it was the 51st state jabs that really packed the most punch. Obviously, the trade war significant as well. But that was the thing that really changed everything. And, if you look at the polls and the way that they shifted, it's absolutely extraordinary. The Liberals were able to make this comeback. And Pierre Poilievre, he had been seen, Emily, you can speak to this more than I can. He had been seen as kind of this, right-wing rising star media figure. I think the right had a lot of hopes for Canada. There was a backlash there during COVID. There were the trucker protests. You, of course, had Trudeau, who had just fallen off a cliff and was sort of forced to resign, opening up the possibility for this election. So really a dramatic change of fortunes here, Em.
Yeah, huge. And, I think one thing that might happen in the media coverage of this over the next 24, 48 hours is that people think because Carney and his party came from so far behind, that this means, Canada has decisively moved, or I shouldn't say moved, but stuck with Trudeau and stuck with the Liberals. But what we ended up seeing is we just had this graphic on the screen that showed they ended up 5 seats short of a majority. And it's absolutely a stunning comeback. There's absolutely no question about that whatsoever. I mean, Poilievre was up by about 20 points in polls closer to the beginning of the year. So the flip after Trudeau is genuinely remarkable. Canada is very, very divided, and it absolutely this is a situation for Canada that's it's not 2015 anymore, where Justin Trudeau is on the scene being the future. Poilievre really was seen as to your point, the antidote to that. So if Trudeau is seen as sort of the friendly face of the neoliberal Western future, then Poilievre was kind of seen as the answer to the follies of that era of Trudeau and Obama and Angela Merkel. He was seen as a figure who could sort of be young and articulate and bring the right into its future in Canada. And the fact that he himself fell so far short, while even things were fairly divided for his party, is a real blow to his ability to have a future. Now, maybe he still will. Politics are unpredictable, but he was particularly on the ascent. And this is a good indication that it didn't work out so well for his brand on the campaign.
Yeah, what you're referring to is he actually lost his own seat. So not only did the Conservatives lose, and they won't have a chance to form a government, the Liberals will, but he actually lost his own seat. So he will not be a member of parliament anymore. So that stings. What David Dole tweeted out in reaction to this, and David's a lefty. He said, liberals just short of a majority, putting NDP, those are the lefties, in the deciding seats. Jagmeet Singh loses his seat, making an NDP leadership race quick and painless. Pierre Poilievre loses his seat. LOL, he says, this is actually the perfect result. So that was his response to all of this. We pulled this reaction from, run-of-the-mill Canadian voter getting her sense of what was going on in this race and why she cast her ballot as she did. Let's go ahead and take a listen to B1B.
I think who I voted for would be the best to take care of Trump, because Trump is, I'm sorry to say, an ass, and he shouldn't even be president of the United States. But because he is, we need a strong person so that we could stand strong.
And I saw a poll that had Trump's approval rating in Canada at something like 11%. I mean, he's just like could not be more unpopular across the political spectrum. And he was not doing much to help them on day of. We can put this next one up on the screen. He posted this on, I believe, Truth Social. He said, "Good luck to the great people of Canada. Elect the man who has the strength and wisdom to cut your taxes in half, increase your military power for free to the highest level in the world, have your car, steel, aluminum, lumber, energy, and all other businesses quadruple in size with zero tariffs or taxes if Canada becomes the cherished 51st state of the United States of America. No more artificially drawn line from many years ago." You know, when I like when he talks about how the borders are arbitrary. "Look how beautiful this landmass would be. Free access with no border. All positives, no negatives. It was meant to be. America can no longer subsidize Canada with the hundreds of billions of dollars a year that we have been spending in the past. It makes no sense unless Canada is a state." That forced Pierre Poilievre to have to respond, put B3 up on the screen. He said, "President Trump, stay out of our election. The only people who will decide the future of Canada are Canadians at the ballot box. Canada will always be proud, sovereign, and independent. We will never be the 51st state. Today, Canadians can vote for change so we can strengthen our country, stand on our own 2 feet, and stand up to America from a position of strength." But Pierre Poilievre had done enough to, associate himself with Trump and with the American right wing that was just completely overcomable. It was completely impossible to overcome, even as he's clearly doing his best here to distance himself from Trump and say, "You stay out of our election, sir. We will never be the 51st state." And again, according to David Dole, that really was a sort of key tension point for Canadians where they wanted nothing to do. David also pointed out the last several ads that Pierre Poilievre's team put out for the election, like their closing ads, did not feature him at all. So, which is also not a great sign of how people are feeling about your candidate.
That post is giving Vladimir stop, right? Like it looks so weak. It looks so weak, especially after Poilievre was sort of pro-Trump in some particular ways. Like it just to have to then say, "President Trump, stay out of our election," like he's a toddler. The flip side of this, of course, is that first of all, the appetite in Canada for indulging the United States. I mean, this isn't just about the Trump administration. This is about the United States, because Canadians know that there are a lot of people in the United States that support the Trump administration. And so the appetite for Canada now becoming anti-US is strong. And Eric Kaufman wrote about this. I want to say it was the Free Press, but he wrote about how Trump's approach to Canada, Greenland, but also just trade and populism in general actually has the effect of undermining some of his populist allies, people who he would want to build up around the world if Trump were engaged in this like robust coherent ideological project to kind of realign the entire world. That actually a lot of this ends up undermining that goal, because let's say you could have had Poilievre in Canada. There are populist parties in Europe. Is Trump hurting an AFD, or is he helping an AFD in Germany? Like, is this sucking the winds out of, is this taking the wind out of the sail of populism in some of these places? Millet, is he going to hurt Millet at the end of the day? These are like legitimate questions. And something very interesting, we have a story up in Unheard on this right now, just this morning, about what happened in Canada. what is like the future of the United States trade relationship with Canada? Does this even work out well for the United States when Canada now has the option to align with other places and the Canadian people do not want to align with the United States under Donald Trump, to the point we were discussing earlier in the show, Krystal? Does the short-term pain end up having, even by the Trump administration's own logic, no long-term gain because those, even in the short term, the relationships were damaged to the point where there are permanent realignments, or at least indefinite realignments, that happen away from the United States?
Yeah, no, Canadians did not hate us, and now they hate us. I mean, if you look at the polling, like the shift in attitudes of your average Canadian vis-a-vis America has dramatically changed and now is incredibly negative. It's somewhere, 65, 70% are like, yeah, screw these people, basically. And all of that effectively comes, from Trump, the 51st state stuff, calling him Governor Trudeau, launching the trade war. All of that has just really shifted attitudes in Canada. It's been very unifying in terms of like Canadian nationalism and perspective. And just to emphasize again how central Trump and the trade war and whatever is, we can put this up on the screen, this next polling, just to show you the way that things unfolded here, just how down and out the Liberals were. And, unlike here, the blue is the Conservatives, the red is the Liberals. Most other places, that's the way they do it. But anyway, we're reversed here because we have to be special. Anyway, you can see where Trudeau resigns. It really is at, a nadir of popularity for the Liberals. And I do think part of the change in their fortunes is also the fact that, okay, Trudeau's gone. We got a new dude. And you could think of a worse resume than a central banker to be at the helm when you're facing this trade war. There was some potentially Mark Carney sort of like fanfic about maybe he was the one organizing the treasury bond sales behind the scenes. I don't know that that's actually true, but in theory, he would be the type of person who would understand the way that you could, you could utilize whatever leverage that you have. Then you see the Trump threatening to make Canada a 51st state and signing tariffs, and the dramatic pull movement up to the present day where they're able to, to achieve this victory. And then the last thing I wanted to put up on the screen is I'm not sure that Trump is like really that upset about this, even though, to your point, Emily, like theoretically, you would think he would prefer to have the more right-wing prime minister in Canada there to work with. But he gave an extraordinary interview to The Atlantic, which could be a whole segment in and of itself. But he got asked specifically about Canada. We can put this part up on the screen. And he seems to just sort of enjoy that he was so central, even if the outcome is the opposite of the one you would think that he would intend. So let me just read this. They say, "You seriously want them to become a state?" Talking about Canada. He says, "I think it'd be great." And then they say, "A hell of a big democratic state." A lot of people say that, but I'm okay with it if it has to be, because I think, actually, until I came along, I'm no political genius, but I know which way they're going to vote. They have socialized medicine. Trump says, until I came along, remember that the conservative was leading by 25 points. And one of the journalists says, "It's true." And he says, "Then I was disliked by enough of the Canadians that I've thrown the election into a close call, right? I don't even know if it's a close call, but the Conservative, they didn't like Governor Trudeau too much. And I would call him Governor Trudeau, but he wasn't fond of that." So I don't know, Em. Seems like he just likes that he was central. He likes that he, overturned what was expected. He likes that he was this troublemaker. In terms of the Canadian elections, it doesn't seem like he's too upset. It seems like he's bragging about the fact that he handed this victory over to the Liberals.
Well, there's a more sinister reading of this too, which was the piece that I referenced that we have up and unheard this morning makes this argument that if you're Donald Trump and you actually want to undermine the stability of Canada, one of the ways to do that might be to take the person who's leading in the polls and just throw it all up into complete chaos and make the government more divided, which it ended up being. So it wasn't a decisive win for the Conservatives, and it ultimately wasn't a decisive win for the Liberals. It's much less of a kind of a stable system at this point. Now, I tend to think what we just heard from Donald Trump in The Atlantic is probably as close to the truth as we can get, which is that, he has another quote in that interview about how he runs the world now, that there's just something kind of thrilling about being the leader of the United States and being able to kind of wave your magic wand via Truth Social and throw everything into complete and utter chaos. There's no like coherent strategy to destabilize Canada behind it. But at the same time, I mean, for like Poilievre was running when he was ahead, he was like running against things like carbon tax. This really was a rejection of sort of left neoliberalism, like Democratic Party, Obama, Trudeau, Merkel, neoliberalism. And Krystal, I forget if this was you who was making this point. Trump also does seem to get along with the Keir Starmers, the, dare I say, Scott Bessents, the Mark Carney types. So he might not be entirely upset about this result because he now feels like maybe he has someone he can like deal with, that he can cut deals with. He doesn't necessarily want everyone to be like a lapdog. He sort of enjoys the competition. Well, he enjoys the lapdogs too, but he also loves the fights. I mean, he relishes the fights, which is why he was talking to The Atlantic yesterday.
Well, he loves our girl Claudia down in Mexico.
And he is so right about her.
So I don't know. I mean, I have no insight into, I did see somebody making that point. It's an interesting one and one to watch. And I don't know whether they'll get along or not, because of the antipathy that the Canadian public has towards Trump specifically, and to the American public now in general. Carney's going to be under tremendous domestic political pressure to be extremely tough when he's dealing with Trump, or at least to project toughness with, and fortitude when dealing with Trump. That's effectively what he has been elected now to do, and to navigate this situation. So yeah, I saw some of the right-wing cope like, oh, this will weaken Canada and now we can roll in the tanks or whatever was the insanity that I was seeing on Twitter. But, conservatives have to be very disappointed when there seemed to be all of this wind at their back, the vibe shift, all of that. And now you've got liberals winning quite handily here and being able to form a government with the lefties pretty easily, and Pierre Poilievre himself losing his own seat. So there you go.
No, you're right. It's totally cope. There were all kinds of think pieces earlier in the year about how this was the end of a neoliberal era in Canada and populism was ascendant. Conservatives were rallying around, American conservatives were rallying around Poilievre, really liked him. He was going viral in American conservative circles.
What was the apple? People keep talking about some apple
munching.
What? Tell me.
Yeah,
I missed this.
It was a viral video that he did Poilievre did, where he was being interviewed by some, it was like, I want to say it was like Canadian broadcast. Like it was a tough, hostile interview. And he was very calmly kind of owning the reporter while he was munching on an apple, very nonchalant. Like he was just in this casual conversation and kind of owning the guy with facts and all of that stuff.
Facts and logic, yes.
I was just going to say facts and logic. So he went really viral. That's probably the first time he got in a lot of American conservatives' radars. And he had other moments like that conservatives were loving. So to turn around now and be like, Poilievre, he was, just this loser all along, who was, driving the Canadian right into the ground. I mean, that's just not how people looked at him 6 months ago.
The other cope I saw is that, the reason he lost is because he didn't embrace Trump. And that's what he should have, he should have embraced Trump, and then that would have led him to victory. And that's just utterly preposterous given how dramatically unpopular Trump is in Canada.
Yeah, that's obviously insane. But there's something about how weak he looked by, at first saying nice things about Donald Trump and then having to say, he was in an impossible situation, then having to say, Mr. President or President Trump, stay out of our election.
Yeah.
Like, it's just
Donald, stop.
Please leave us alone. Yeah, not great.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.